everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm really glad you could be here with me today. And I'm filming this video at night. It's a little bit different. I got some new lighting for my room because my room gets really dark. I don't have really conducive lighting for making videos, but now I do, and let me know what you think about the lighting. That would be really cool. So it's easier for me to film videos at night, schedule-wise, and I'm a little bit more alert at night too. So let me know what you think, and we'll get right to the purpose of this video. And make sure you stay till the end of the video because I am going to talk about a couple of other things, and I did have a question that was asked of me because I was going to do a Q&A, but I only got one question. I am going to answer that question though, so stay till the end of the video and find out what it is. Okay? Let's get right to it. I am doing a book review for book 3 in the Deathgate cycle entitled Fire Sea. This follows the continuing adventures of Haplo, the patron. He is a higher race of humanoid being who has tattoos of runes, circular runes on his skin that he uses to manipulate his magic and produce different effects in the world. He is the primary character in the Deathgate Cycle series, and he is followed in his adventures from time to time by a dog, and also by another person who is a member of his sister race, the Sartans. And they have a deep-seated hatred for each other, but yet they're kind of forced into companionship on this journey. So the first book took place in the world of air. The second book took place in the world of fire, Prion, and this third book takes place on the world of Abarak, which is the realm of stone. And this book was really quite interesting. What I love about these books is it gradually gives you more and more information about the Sartan and about the Patron and what's happened to them. And what's a little bit different about Abarak is it is only inhabited by people that we find out later are members of the race of the Sartan. There are really no humans or elves or dwarves on this world. They've all seemingly gone extinct. And it is a very hard world to live on. The surface is extremely cold, and without the power of these giant machines that were constructed thousands of years ago to keep people alive by keeping them warm and helping to grow the crops with warmth and the necessary nutrients the crops need, they would freeze on the surface. And the book kind of starts out following a group of Sartan who are about to have to leave their home on the surface of the planet because all of the energy that was keeping them alive is being drained from the surface, and the only thing that they can think of is that it is being taken from them by way of siphoning it from the surface down into the depths of the core of the planet. And the core of the planet is beset by this giant fire sea, this sea of molten lava and rock, and there's a really cool dragon that lives among the waters, if you will, not really waters, lives among the magma in this fire sea. And it's just a really cool concept for a world. I found that really fascinating. And so they're having to leave their home for the core of the planet to hopefully find some way to sustain their society. And we happen on Haplo on his airship, and he's with Alfred, who is a Sartan, and he's kind of made Alfred his prisoner, even though it's becoming more and more apparent that Alfred is a necessary evil. He's somebody that Haplo has to tolerate in order to succeed in his task. And his task is to alert his master to the goings on in the different realms of the world of the Death Gate. And so they end up getting sucked into the core of Abarak on the airship, and he lands the airship, and they find this town, and it seems to have been deserted. But as they're exploring and getting to know the area a little bit, they happen upon the group of Sartan that have had to leave the surface, and many of them have died on their journey to the core, and something unique and forbidden is being carried out among the Sartan people, something that just sickens Alfred to his core because it's something that is abhorrent among their people. I won't go into too much detail, but this is really where it starts to bother me a little bit. So the main magic system in this particular book is necromancy, raising people from the dead. And I'm not a real big fan of necromancy. I've never been a huge fan of zombies, even though I did start getting into The Walking Dead finally. My kids finally taught me into watching it, and I'm really, really enjoying it. But as a whole, I'm not really a fan of zombies or the dead walking among us, and necromancy has always been one of my least favorite magic skills. So the Sartan people have essentially adopted the arcane magic of necromancy, and they've been raising their dead. So it's really unique the way they do it. Even though I don't like necromancy, the way the necromancy was written and the consequences of performing the necromancy is very well thought out and very well realized, and it's very humorous in parts too. A lot of the comic relief in this book has to do with the undead and their antics, and they can't think for themselves. They can only obey simple commands, and you can just imagine the hilarity that ensues. And they end up having to really fight for their lives because the kingdom that lives below the surface has no desire to really work together with the people from above the surface, and they really want to make them subservient, and they want to rule over them. And so it's just this clash, this culture war, and this societal war among people who are of the same race. And it really becomes pretty interesting. There's definitely a political power structure there with this king who is just absolutely strange. He speaks in plural, so whenever he's addressing somebody, he says, "We think this and we think that," where it's just him that thinks that, but he kind of speaks as though he is his people. It's kind of odd, but you end up really feeling sorry for the people that have left their home on the surface that they've known for all these years just to try and survive, and then to be set upon by this other group of their people who really doesn't care about them and just wants to use them for their own purposes. So it's a really interesting story, and Haplo is very, very careful about letting them know who he is, because it's the patrons are not well loved by the Sartans in any way, shape, or form, and so and vice versa. He doesn't like them either. But there are some really cool parts to this story, and it really involves the Sartan race. I mean, they happen upon these secret catacombs and find out things about the Sartans that they didn't know before. There are little tidbits that we learn about Haplo, more and more about who he is, and funny enough, we also learn more about his dog, of all things. It's almost like his dog is a familiar, because at one point something happens to the dog, and later he turns up just like nothing ever happened to him, and it seems like he's intimately attached to Haplo in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really fascinating to learn that, and we still don't know a whole lot about that. But I highly, highly recommend this series. This book was okay. It wasn't horrible. There were parts of it I didn't like, of course. As I mentioned, the necromancy, not a huge fan. But the character development is really, really interesting. And what's really cool to see is it feels like more and more Haplo and Alfred are starting to tolerate each other. Maybe even like each other. Just a little bit. And just to see the way they interact, and they end up having to help each other out, and it's really cool to see their relationship growing. And we find out more and more about some of Alfred's magical powers as well, whereas he's just kind of been more of a background character up until now. But in this book, he starts to kind of come into his own, and we get to see a little bit of his powers. And I thought it was just really, really well thought out. Definitely not my favorite book in the series, by far, of what I've read. But really enjoyable. And I really think that if you like character development, you like a really interesting magic system, you really need to be reading this book. Because I've never found anything quite like the magic system in this book. And you hear me talk a lot about Brandon Sanderson and how much I love his magic systems. And how much I like unique magic systems. And this book definitely has a unique magic system. I haven't really seen anything like it. One thing that I really enjoy about this series is there's footnotes, which is kind of weird if you think about it. Not many fiction novels, especially fantasy, you don't see a lot of footnotes, really, in any books that I've read, but besides this. But the footnotes are pretty helpful. There was one that was kind of just like, okay, I didn't really need to know that information. But other footnotes in the book were very helpful. And there's often a lot of detail talking about the magic system in the book. Towards the end of the book, you'll find different tidbits about the magic system and what's going on with it. So it's really well thought out and well planned out. I thought they do a really interesting job. This one in particular has some music in the back of it. I don't know if you can play it. I don't play an instrument, so I didn't try to play it, but there's music in the back of it, and I think it has to do with some of the Sartan magic, because they do sing their magic into existence, and so it's really cool. I definitely think that you should check this out. I would give this book, what would I give this book? I'd probably give it 4 solid dragons. Necromancy aside, I thought it was a really fun and unique story, and it was a quick read, and it gave me enough information about the series as a whole and about the characters as a whole that it's a very worthwhile inclusion in this series. So, 4 dragons, you heard it, and I'm definitely happy that I read this book, and I think you will be too. Again, this is an older series. But if you like older fantasy, but with some really unique elements, check it out. It's really good. So, as I mentioned, I had planned on doing a Q&A this week. I only got one question. And if you ever want to ask me questions, leave your questions at the bottom of the videos in the comments, or tweet them to me or whatever. Send me a message on Facebook, because I can keep a running list of the questions that people want answered, and I can maybe try and do more Q&A videos in the future. But this is a question that was asked me by Geek on My Sleeve, and they're one of my YouTube friends and part of the BookTube community, and I joined them for one video in particular. I'll be joining them again soon. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But they asked me who is my favorite Cosmere character and why. And if you don't know what the Cosmere is, it is Brandon Sanderson's multiverse that most of his books take place in, at least his fantasy books, such as Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive. So in terms of my favorite Cosmere character, that's a tough one. I think overall, my favorite Cosmere character, in terms of characters that get a lot of page time, that are really well fleshed out, I would probably have to say Kaladin in the Stormlight Archive series. He is one of the Knights Radiant in the stories. Oh, sorry, that might be a spoiler. Oh well. He is a really, really well fleshed out character. I love to see how he develops over the course of the book so far, from a slave, and he coming from what would seem like poverty and up into the ranks of the military, and becoming this really powerful character. And I just really, really love his character development. So Kaladin is probably my favorite Cosmere character right now, in terms of the sheer amount of detail that's put into him. But I do have another favorite character, and this character does not get a whole lot of book time at all. Very, very little. And that would be Hoid. He shows up in in most of the different Cosmere books in one form or another. Sometimes he's not called Hoid. Sometimes he is known as Wit in the Stormlight Archive, but he later on you might find out that, oh, by the way, my name's Hoid. And so he's a really, really cool character, and so mysterious. And I think that's one of the reasons I really, really like him, because you get to speculate about who and what he actually is. And there's a lot of mystery around him, and I really, really like that. So I actually have two favorite characters. I have Kaladin and Hoid. There are so many good characters in the Cosmere, though. It's really, really hard to pick just one. So, yeah. So that's the answer to that question. Let me know what you guys thought. If you are a big Cosmere fan, you probably know what I'm talking about, and you can talk with me more about that in the comments. If you're new to the Cosmere, you definitely need to be reading more Brandon Sanderson. He is an instant buy author for me. That's a term that was coined by the guys at Geek on My Sleeve. I gotta give credit where credit's due, but yes, instant buy author for sure. When I have money, he's an instant buy author. Anyway, so yes, I will be doing another video with Geek on My Sleeve. I'll leave a link to their channel down below, because you want to make sure and check it out. It is going to be Sunday. So if you're watching this video, today is Friday, and I am going live with them on Sunday on their channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to be discussing and doing a geek out on Mistborn Book 3, The Hero of Ages. It will be spoilers, so if you haven't read it, you may not want to tune in unless you don't mind a lot of spoilers. But if you have read it, I think you'll really enjoy it. Come hang out with us there. I am going to be doing another video that is Cosmere related with the guys at Geek on My Sleeve. So I'll talk a little bit more about that probably in my next video, because I'll have it all planned out at that point. And I really hope you guys will tune in for that as well. And that will be featured on my channel here. So check that out. Make sure that you are doing all the stuff wherever it might appear on the screen here. I don't know if it's going to be on this side or on this side, but you know, wherever it fits, do all that stuff to help support me. If you want to support me financially, you can find my Patreon in the description below. There's also other stuff in the description below, so make sure you check it out. And make sure that you tune in every Friday, because I will have videos every Friday, just like planned, with the occasional extra bonus video, if I so happen to have some extra content to throw your way. So, with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend, and make sure that you read more books this weekend. I'll talk to you in my next video, guys. Take care. Bye.